Okay, once again, 96 Dodge Ram 2500 4x4 with a 12 valve Cummins diesel. This particular truck has 318,000 miles on it. I bought it when it was 235,000 miles on it, and I love this truck. I love everything about it. I love the fact that they're easy to work on. What you're looking at here is the front of the motor with the fan shroud, radiator, and the fan pulley assembly disconnected. Now, any of you who may have worked on a water pump on one of these things, they're very easy to change out, which is what we did yesterday. All you're doing is, it only takes about 15 minutes to get to this point. If you're good with what you're doing, your bolts over here, take the radiator off, just disconnect your lower radiator hose, disconnect your upper radiator hose over here. This is all basic stuff if you know what you're doing when it comes to looking at the front of an engine. I'm not a mechanic, by the way. This is just from years and years of driving these things and being familiar with it. They really are the best engines to work on. They're very accessible. Everything is on the front of the engine. There's really not anything other than the transmission on the back, which we all know Dodge requires transmissions pretty frequently. I think I wager I've put 2 transmissions in this truck. I'd probably say there was another 1 or 2 before that, but anyway. So basically what we're looking at here is behind your fan bracket. This is where your serpentine belt comes up over the top of the fan. It goes down to the flywheel, goes underneath the flywheel, and it comes back up and over the pulley right here. So basically what we're looking at is you're coming over the top of the alternator. You're going to come right down underneath here, and then this is back where your fan pulley is going to be. I removed that already. Very easy to get to. Takes a little bit to get the screws behind there, but you'll see what you're looking at when you get to that point. Basically what you want to do is you want to get this fan bracket out of here, but as a continuation of where the serpentine belt goes, it goes over the top, down under the water pump, back up over the top of the fan pulley, and then it comes back down underneath the flywheel. Flywheel turns in the clockwise direction if you're looking towards the rear of the vehicle, so it actually turns counterclockwise if you're driving it. And then it comes back up and over this pulley right here and down. It actually comes underneath here and back up over the pulley. So it goes right down, around, counterclockwise around the AC compressor and back up to the alternator. That was a little bit, like I said, this is my first time doing one of these videos and I'm all by myself, so it's a little bit difficult to explain it while I'm trying to make sure the camera's in the right place. But anyway, you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. So, you know, we got new hoses here, new hoses on the bottom, fairly new radiator, brand new water pump as of yesterday. I tore this whole thing down yesterday. And of course, here we are again tearing it all back apart, but that's okay. So basically what we're looking at is we're going to simulate the fact that this water pump is turning. And the water pump actually turns in the opposite direction because the belt is going this way and around. So the belt is coming under and pulling it counterclockwise. So what's happening is if we go like this and we just spin that water pump, there's just a little bit of water. You can see I disconnected the radiator and I just got a slow drip going on onto the intake side. This is where your radiator would be pulling fluid out of the bottom of the radiator. It comes in at the top here, comes out where the thermostat housing is, across the top, into the top of the radiator here, through the radiator going this way, out the bottom, and this is to simulate water going into the engine here from the radiator. Your water pump would be turning in the counterclockwise direction, as we already said. Now, if you look, just by hand, when I turn this, See that water that's coming right out of the bottom of that weep hole right here? That's because for a longer period of time than I should have, I was running water inside the engine instead of the proper coolant mixture. That's my fault. I thought that the leak was coming from a number of other places. Clearly, when I add a little bit of water to this thing, you're going to see very quickly the water is coming out, just as if that water pump was turning and pressurizing the system. So basically what happened to me is yesterday I got this water pump installed, put the serpentine belt back on, put the radiator back in, put the fan shroud back in, buckled everything down, put the battery cable across the front, screwed everything in, dressed it up nice, cleaned it up nice, everything looked great. Started up the engine after putting some coolant in there, and there was coolant, brand new, couple gallons of concentrated coolant and water mixed, flowing right out the bottom of this what appeared to be the fan bracket, which we know that the fan bracket doesn't do anything. It's not. All it's doing is it's just mounted to the front of the engine here. But you can see, there she is right there. And what I'm going to do is, you don't want to do this for too long, but we're not driving, we're not doing anything. There she is right there. Where's the odometer? 317, 743. Almost 318,000 miles. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start this. And we're going to come back around this way. It's going to be a little bit loud, I apologize. I don't like to run these for too long without everything where it's supposed to be, but for demonstration purposes, you guys can see what I'm talking about. So the next part of this project, it appears to be getting that plug out, which I've never done before, but I do understand that they are meant to come out and they are meant to go back in again. So what I'm going to end up having to do is I'm actually going to have to go to a YouTube video myself and figure out exactly how that has to happen without damaging anything. Now, while I was at it, just for sake of filling everybody in on also what's going on here, I've also had quite a bit of an oil leak on the front of this engine. Now these engines chatter and rattle and vibrate a lot. It's just the way they are. And what I ended up discovering here in pretty short order is the gasket behind here as well as the gasket on the front of this. I'm not exactly sure what this is called technically, but this is where your fill is for your oil. So the oil goes into here and then it makes its way down into the engine this way. But I think part of the issue I was having with regard to an oil leak is the fact that these bolts all the way around this entire perimeter of this whole unit were all 1/8 of a turn loose, enough that I could probably, with very little effort, put a wrench on there and get it to crank down. Those are all 10 millimeter. If I had my 10 millimeter, I'd show you. I mean, now I've got it snugged up, but I mean, these things were loose. Once again, very, very easy to work on. Not really what I had planned on doing on a Saturday afternoon when there's work to be done, but I don't like to skip any steps in the meantime. So we snugged up these bolts. That's going to take care of probably the oil issue on the front. I had another gentleman replace the gaskets on this unit. I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. He tore down the entire side of the driver's side of the engine, behind where the injector manifold is here. Replaced all the gaskets on the other side. So I'm fairly confident, and I'm going to go back and just make sure that everything is snugged up on the underside of the injector manifold there, if that's what it's called. It looks like a manifold to me. I don't know what it's called, but you know what it is. It's the rail. It's the rail where all the injector pipes come out of there. There's really not much down behind, other than there is, if I'm not mistaken, there's some kind of a oil pressure sensor or something under there. That's how we discovered the oil leak in the first place. But anyway, back to what I was saying. Sorry about the video being a little bit, you know, just jumping around a little bit, but I think it's important, especially since there isn't any other information out there. I mean, this has taken me the better part of 2 days just to try and, you know, get a clear picture of what's going on the front of this engine. There's really not much to it. Everything else is bolted on. The pulley's bolted on. The alternator's bolted on. The air conditioning is bolted on. The only things that are bolted into the engine are this fan bracket and, of course, the water pump. And you can see, just with that little bit of water that I put in there, it is still weeping right out of there. You can see there's 2 holes. Those are the 2 holes. Those holes were not really that visible before. There was some rust covering that. I took a little paint scraping tool, and as soon as I went like this across that whole unit there, it started to flake off pieces of metal, just like rust would flake off. And that's where those 2 holes became obvious. You can see when I put pressure through there, yeah, it comes out of the hole in the middle, but you can also see that it's definitely coming out around the edge of that freeze plug. There were some overheating issues. I'm, believe it or not, happy to see that this is where the leak is presenting itself, because otherwise I'd be very nervous if this wasn't behind where I thought it was, because I didn't know going into this that was behind there. So it was kind of a shot in the dark to get that fan bracket off of there. Now you can see on the fan bracket, if this is the top, those 3 bolts go across the top. 1, 2, 3, 4 down on the bottom would be the one that's a little awkward. You got to get in there with a wrench, and the bolt is obviously still in there like so. So these are your top 3, and you can see there's a little bit of a vent right here, and you can see that leak has been coming for quite some time, because what happens is, and you got rust on the back side of this, which is basically telling me that weep hole has been weeping for quite a while. And what happens is it comes right out the bottom, it goes right here, and then of course when the engine's running and this fan is spinning, well, it's spraying water all over the inside of the engine. So engine compartment, all over the outside of the engine, but all over the inside of the engine compartment. So you know, you're not able to really get any clear idea of where it's coming from, because once it hits the fan or the belt or the pulley while it's spinning, you've got water dripping everywhere. So that's why I tried to diagnose this more or less with just a garden hose. It's a hell of a lot quieter to do it that way too. But just with the garden hose, which is just enough water on your water intake for the cooling side, or the cooling water intake for the for the intake side of the water pump. So basically what we're doing is we're just giving just a little bit of a gravity there, and of course some of it's gravity, some of it's me just pushing on that garden hose just a little bit to just get enough of that water to flow into the intake side of the water pump. And then it's just flowing. The water pump's not even turning, but it's flowing through the water pump and it's getting to the other side. And you can see very quickly, I mean, that's just not any pressure at all. I mean, I don't even have this thing even on. And there it is. All right, so the next thing that I need to accomplish is going to be figuring out how to get this freeze plug out of there. Now, I'm going to hit some YouTube videos, and I'm going to be right back with you guys. Appreciate you watching. Hopefully, if there's one person out there that can benefit from this video, you're doing a hell of a lot better than I'm doing right now. So, I'll touch back with you just shortly. Thanks for watching my first YouTube video on a 96 Dodge Ram 2500 with a 12 valve Cummins.